And welcome everyone. In sports, there is this really important question over which people usually debate, and that is who is the greatest of all time in that sport? You see, for example, I might say in football, I think the greatest of all time is maybe Maradona or Pelé, but today we're gonna talk about chess. In chess, when we talk about goats, there are really three names that come to mind. There is Bobby Fischer, there is Kasparov, and there is Magnus Carlsen. And usually Fischer is left out of the conversation because he was really a sudden player. He stayed at the top for maybe some years, and but the dominance that he was able to maintain over those years was incredible. And in my opinion, I believe Fischer was the greatest because, for example, when we look at Kasparov or Carlsen, they both have a period of dominance which lasts from 10 to 20 years, and maybe that is a point for them. But the genius, the brilliancy of Bobby Fischer, I believe, it's not matched yet. And today I want to show you some games that I believe really prove my points. And the first game I want to show you is a game Bobby played against Robert Byrne in the US Chess Championship of 63, 64. And Bobby won that event with a score of 11 out of 11. It was just pure dominance. And so the game, in this game, Fischer plays with black pieces, and the game starts with the move. I'm sorry, I spoiled. Oops, I spoiled the game. Uh, the game starts with d4. Uh, uh, Fischer really liked to play in a King's Indian style castle, and then play this move d5, which is called the Grunfeld defense. Now, the Grunfeld defense is a really complicated opening, and there is really a lot of theory, and I don't recommend playing it, especially for beginners and intermediate players. And the game is actually white goes for a Catalan setup, and we see this move d5 trying to gain central control, and the pawn on d5 is supported by the pawn on c6, and this is called the Grunfeld. Against the Grunfeld, white decides to play this bishop g2, which is a kind of a Catalan setup, and we see how the game evolves. Now white tries to apply pressure on this pawn with both the bishop and the knight. We get castle and normal development. Now the game is very symmetrical. You might notice that there is a fianchetto on both king sides. That is, the pawn structure is symmetrical. The pieces are kind of put in the same places, with the difference that the knight is on f6 and this knight is on e2. But position is kind of it's kind of symmetrical. You wouldn't expect nothing crazy to happen, but this game, in fact, was really short. You wouldn't believe it, but it is this way. So uh, black now plays b6 with the intent of putting the bishop on a6 to laser beam this diagonal to put pressure on the knight, pinning it to the rook. Now, white decides to copy black, basically. Like white plays b3, now it's gonna put the bishop, as you can see, on a3, and black did the same. So white decides to literally copying what black does, and the position is really symmetrical. Now this pawn is pinned, so black plays rook e8 to break out of the pin, and maybe play for maybe not e5, but e6 for sure. Now uh, white decides to advance with the queen because he wants to put a rook here, both either the A rook or the F rook, and put pressure on the center after we see this explosion with E5 and D takes E5. Now, black recaptures, and here is a really important moment because you see, uh, you might think, well, the F rook we should move because by moving the F rook we leave the C file open for the A rook, and really I don't see a reason why I should move the A rook, but this is actually wrong because the F1 rook is actually doing a really important thing. It is defending the F2 pawn. You might say also, well, I moved the F rook because now I'm breaking out of the pin, but this is actually a mistake. So white plays rook d1, I'm sorry, and put pressure on the d file and on the d5 pawn, which is attacked by the knight and the battery over here. Now, black puts the knight on the center. This knight is a 4-point knight, really. You see, it is really active. It controls all of these squares, and yeah, this is really a problem for white. And hmm, white tries to solve his problem with queen c2 attacking the knight, but we see now the problem with moving the f rook. Now there is knight f2, and knight f2 is really a huge problem for white because white really has to take with king f2, and after white take, we got this incredible move, knight g4. Knight g4 is really an incredible move because we threaten a fork, and you might say, well, king f3 is really not good because it's mate after rook e3. So white has to go back to g1, and here black takes, and this is just a fork. And you might say, well, this is a fork. Black is gonna take the rook. Well, let's see. Because after, I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong button again. Sorry. Yeah, because after black takes, white moves the queen, of course, because you gotta move the queen. And now you might say, well, it's gonna take the rook. Well, that's wrong, because in this position, black played knight takes g2. Knight takes g2 is a absolutely beautiful move, and the idea is to play d4 to open up the diagonal and to attack the king. You do not move the bishop first because otherwise white puts its knight into the center and you cannot move the pawn anymore. So we get d4 first, which is a pawn sacrifice, but bishop b7 is really just crushing. After white plays king f1, we got queen d7 with a very simple idea. This idea is to play queen h3 check, and this would be literally mate after some moves. In fact, we see that white goes back with knight. This is just crashing. In fact, in this position, white decided to resign. This is actually crazy because white could have waited a little bit more to try to maybe find something, but this is just crashing after queen h3. And there is really a funny story about this move, this position, and the story goes that two grandmasters were commentating the position, and they believed that in this position black resigned. They believed black was the one to resign because they believed, well, black is just a piece down, and black resigned and white won. But it was actually white that resigned, and because after queen h3, queen h3, queen g2. Queen g2 actually delays the defeat a little bit more, but you just move the queen. If h3, you just go here, and you just harass the pieces. But there is really this funny move which is after a check. Yeah, it's just crashing. And now to the second game. So this game was played in 1956 at the Marshall Chess Club in New York, and as I said, it is referred to as the game of the century, and we're gonna see why. This is really a crazy game, and in this game, Fischer was actually just 13 years old. Yeah, let that just sink in for a moment. 13 years old, like that's crazy. And we see that White goes for knight f3. Knight f3 is a really flexible move because you don't really commit any pawn in the center, and we see Fischer going for the King's Indian again. White plays c4, transposing to an English opening. And we see after a while that White plays this move d4. And after a while, Black goes for the Grunfeld again. So we've seen in two games, in both these two games, Fischer played the Grunfeld opening. So uh, in this is the Russian system with queen b3, which is a really weird move, trying to defend this pawn with the queen. In fact, after we see takes, this queen might seem misplaced, but this is actually considered quite a good way to fight against the Grunfeld. So we see this move c6 that happened also in the last game. This time there is a clear threat, so you gotta play this move. And white goes for e4. So white takes the full center, and black just develops and attacks the queen. Now, in the meanwhile, white played rook d1, trying to line this up over here, and black pins the knight to the rook. This is a really important move because, as we're gonna see, this is actually gonna prove a really strong pin. This is deemed as a mistake by the engine. In fact, this is a really doubtful move because you already moved your bishop once, and as a beginners, we are told not to move the same piece twice in the opening. In fact, now Fischer plays a brilliant move, knight a4. Well, you're gonna say, well, this is just a free piece. Well, if you play this move in your games, this is just a piece blunder and you're an idiot. But Bobby Fischer was actually a genius because you cannot really take this. Because if you take this, the idea is to take on e4, and this is a fork. So that's crazy. And in fact, White decides not to take the knight, but decides to go to a3 with the queen. And after takes, we got knight a4, which is considered a great move because this move seems to hang a fork. But when you play in the opening and your opponent has not castle, you have to look for ways in which you can open lines of attack for you. In this case, white decides to take, and black moves the queen. This is a really important move because you say, well, this just hangs a rook. There is not really a threat on the king. But if you take, I might take and attack your queen. And after you move your queen to b3, let's say, trying to exchange queens, now we see the problem uh, with leaving the king in the center. This is a really important problem for white. In fact, this didn't happen, and white didn't take the bait. In fact, white plays bishop c4 now. And again, we see a great move by Bobby Fischer, sacrificing a piece with knight c3. Now, white theoretically could have taken this, but again, you see, after moves like rook a to e8, this is really a problem. So white once again decides not to take the bait and plays bishop c5, attacking our queen. But here Fischer plays rook e8 check, and this is a really fascinating move, because in this position everything is hanging. The queen is hanging, the knight is hanging, and you might be tempting to move your queen maybe, or maybe knight d5 to counterattack your opponent's queen. But now in this position, bishop e6 is absolutely best move, because uh, you cannot take this. You cannot take this, because if you take this, queen b5 check is just made. This bishop is actually doing a great job patrolling the diagonal, so it cannot move away. In fact, white decides to take the queen, which was also not the best move, because why should I take in this? But after white takes this, it's really a problem, because white can take this because of the pawn. So white decides to take, but after take, now there is what we call a windmill. That is when the king is forced to go up and down, and we can give countless check like this. And now we don't pick up the rook, but we take first the we take the bishop first, attack the queen, then we go here because we protect our bishop, and just then we take, and now we are completely winning. I mean, Fischer is completely winning. In fact, just after a little conversion, um, you see these pieces are really strong. White decides not to resign, which was also really respectful. White decides that he wanted to give a white a chance to finish the game. I'm sorry, black the chance to finish the game. And in fact, this was a beautiful mate with these four pieces, which are really well coordinated. And yeah, I hope that I proved my point. I believe that Fischer was actually is actually the greatest of all time. And then Fischer went on to invent chess 96, and maybe I'm gonna do a video on that, because chess 96 is really uh, 960, I should say, is really fascinating. I like it a lot. So I hope you liked the video. As always, remember to like and subscribe, and also follow me on Twitch, where I'm on my road to become a grandmaster. Maybe I can also play some real moves. Yes, see you there. Bye.